Yeah, Commander's Insight. So with
We're gonna...
the Baral in play, this card is a 3-mana draw 2.
Yep.
Because it gets discounted by 1 from the Baral, and you've cast Baral once, and it only gets better after that. You
Yeah.
can cast it as a 5-mana draw 4, and so on.
So we
So
have a more or less classic control mirror here, I would assume.
yeah, the Hei Bai deck is the control variant. Just have to get it into Moxfield.
So here we have an opposition agent end of turn that's dealt with a 4 spike. Yeah, I would assume that it's not that easy to say whether or not it's a favorite matchup for Baral, but usually in a control mirror, mono blue is always slightly ahead. You know, it's not a bird in the command zone. Baral has very different dynamics. Here we have Hei Bai being cast, answered by Memory Lapse. And now we need the Jace to put it on the bottom of the library, which will likely
True.
not happen, but
There's no Jace in the list.
yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Baral
this is
coming
already a
down.
lot of tempo loss, and with the
Yeah.
Baral on the field, he gets to start doing some stronger stuff. Yeah, like a stock up. I mean, it does leave him shields down for the Hei Bai to come down.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he will commit to Hei Bai right away next turn. So unless there's a Solitude, not a Solitude, a subtlety, um, we
We have
might see
a
the Hei Bai resolve.
stock up cast for 2. There is a Vedelkin Shackles in his hand.
The Hei Bai is playing I would say the standard split of three sanctums. So he has there's the possibility of Hei Bai coming down as a no Hei Bai this round. We
Oh,
have a prismatic
prismatic
ending
ending. Okay.
on Baral.
That's a card that, when it was printed, I thought, or I think we saw it quite often. Also because back then, I mean, Aragon was everywhere, and the deck was obviously featuring it, but there weren't too many 4-color plus control decks.
Yeah.
These days, you rarely see it. Also because it feels like there's not that much 3-colored being played anymore. More like we see more monocolored and B-colored decks.
Yeah. Yeah, and we also have answers that like for example, abrupt decay is always going to be a better rate than prismatic ending. Prismatic ending will get more things, but it really does feel bad sometimes to kill to spend 3 mana killing a 3-mana creature,
Yeah.
which a lot of other spells in the format don't need.
So we have a resolved extra planar lens.
And with the prismatic ending already gone, there aren't that many answers in the Hei Bai deck to deal with that.
Yeah.
There's a Teferi and an Oko to bounce or to Elkit, and there's an abrupt decay.
Oh, and here we have the waterbending scroll. That's powerful. Really powerful. Even having 1 mana left to activate it end of turn. I'll be completely honest. This artifact alone is for me a reason to play things like Baral or Wanshitong or whatsoever, because
Yep,
it's just so powerful.
absolutely.
Okay, for 6, probably playing the Teddy from hand for 6. Oh no, because he activated a Mistrise village. That makes sense.
To make it uncounterable.
That's an advantage. Now you've taken away the card draw engine from the mono blue player. That's an advantage that Baral does not have. If the correct shrine is coming down, and we have the best shrine actually, then you definitely, I mean, you can search for the blue 4-mana one in your
To draw
upkeep.
2 cards and discard 1 at the
Exactly.
beginning of your main phase, and after that, get the other shrine, which will so the second shrine will draw you 3 cards then, and then after that, the turn after that, you've drawn what is it? You draw 6 cards, discard 1. So yeah, that way, pretty very very strong.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm. However, we are looking at a setup extraplanar lens and a full hand,
Mhm.
which can with a yeah, we have a consult the start charts. We if he finds a Palinchron, he can start going through his deck to um, with infinite mana. He but also just having as much mana as he does have now. There's a bunch of spells in the deck that will draw him lots of cards and actually generate that card advantage. I think I saw a turnabout earlier in his hand. Maybe I'm mistaken, but that does act as a ritual.
Yeah. I was just about to say the downside against decks like that is usually those mono blue control decks play a couple of bounce spells. So, you get to play your panda and you find those fancy shrines whatsoever, and then they end up in your hand because your opponent just plays an Into the Royal and stuff like this. But it seems that Damian does not have access to that right now.
Yeah, so he has a Sink into Stupor in the deck, and he has a Repeal in the deck. Apart from that, not that many answers to non-creature
And there
permanents.
there comes the Brazen Borrower, and that's what I was talking about. He has 1 mana left open because he had to tap 3. The consult costs 3 with the kicker. And here comes the Brazen Borrower, and there is perfectly 1 mana left to bounce the shrine. And then you're still left with 2 mana, so you can potentially cast a CMC3 spell if it has
Yeah,
generic mana included to interact with what your opponent wants to do. So that's a very good find here.
yeah.
Yeah,
It always
there we
seems
go.
like when
Very good timing.
when yeah, absolutely. He had no answer to it, and he just found it in the nick of time.
Yeah, it's like when good players have the right answer at the right time, feels even more uh,
Absolutely. Like
harder to beat.
he hasn't seen that many cards with the consult, but the discipline to wait on the consult paid off here.
Absolutely.
He could have cast it last turn for 2 at the end of the turn.
I mean, Jordan can actually think about casting it with the Mistrise Village. Then again, I don't know, leaving your opponent with potentially 10 mana plus the cost reduction from Baral seems quite scary to me. But if there's isn't anything else that you can do, we're looking at a counter spell right now. So that could be a thing to keep open. But I can definitely see why you would try to bring it down at some point because it can definitely win you the game in the long run. Okay, yeah, you can also just hardcast it
Oh yeah,
and
he's hard casting it with the no. He's
no,
paying
he's
6
not.
mana?
No, he's not.
Okay.
Costs 5 and yeah. Is there interaction for that? Seems there is. Oh,
Seems
there's
like
an
it.
intuition in
Okay.
response with 1 mana open.
So I don't
Yeah,
think he can intuition. So I mean, he could intuition for Force of Negation, but that's not gonna be the card that he gets to put in his hand. There's a counterspell for the intuition.
coming a bit from the Lear mindset, playing that deck. I didn't play it. I think I played it once or twice online or something. But rather to see how the deck feels.
Yeah.
You have to pay lots of respect to intuition.
Yep.
And I like the fact that he decided to just counter the spell, the tutor right away, to not let Damian flood the graveyard even further. Here, unfortunately, we have the Snapcaster that comes down. going for the stock up, yeah, not bad.
Yeah, so I don't know
More
if he
and
has
more
lands
card
in hand, but
advantage.
if he's looking for lands, this is definitely one of the better cards to play looking for lands.
And since the
Um,
deck plays Palinchron, right now we would have a setup for infinite mana, right?
uh, if he has a land and a Palinchron, then yes.
Yeah. Nemanja, we cannot share the lists with you because for as long as the tournament is going on, we are not allowed to share them. We have access to
Yeah.
the deck lists and we can talk about what the players include, but we cannot share them with you. Otherwise, people could hop onto the stream, find the deck list, and then they have competitive advantage because they know what their opponents are up to.
Yep. That is something we do wish to prevent.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
in the
will
YouTube video,
post
they will be
post
linked.
all the exactly. We will post all the lists in the videos, but right now for the live it's not possible.
Okay. Yeah, cryptic bounce.
That's that
There's
must be super frustrating.
absolutely.
I mean,
He
you have
predicted it
that.
once.
Yeah, yeah. You have the teddy bear on one side, but I mean, there's also no way to trigger. There's a consult and a mental misstep. So I think instead of is it a consult? Yeah, I think it's a consult, or is it a memory lapse? I'm not entirely sure. No, it's a memory lapse, right? I can't say.
Um,
I think it's a memory lapse.
he's going pretty fast. It does look like a full-out consult to start charts to me.
We will see. Yeah, I think you're right. If it would be a memory lapse, you could think about recasting the shrine for the third time.
I mean, he
Mm,
can also just activate the Mistrise Village and recast the shrine.
true.
However, like, this does seem... Baral hasn't presented anything crazy powerful that is kind of coming up, but I mean, he's made land drops, he has a pretty full hand, and
I like that. I like
plays
that
an
decision.
uncounterable
Yeah,
consult.
I think that's right here. You have to do that because you have to expect your opponent uh, has an interaction for that, and you definitely want to filter out some things and find some answers against potential.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the tapping here, I understand the tapping. You would not leave the swamp open. Now he finds a cut down, which could shut down Baral, but then again, I think with the extra planar lands on field, it's not too relevant either.
Yeah, I think shutting down Baral here is too little too late. And it's even something that could potentially power up the commander's insight even
Yeah,
more.
true.
Not that he has it in hand or anything, just that
And I mean,
yeah,
now
I
we
think
have
the
a
discount from
clock.
Baral isn't doing too much.
True.
6. So he also didn't find a land. He chose not to go for a land in the
Oh,
consult.
and now you can take control of the teddy. That's not good. That
This is
makes it more difficult.
and Hei Bai does not play Wrath the Skies. I understand not playing Wrath of Skies, but I feel like it's
I
a card
think,
that's so much better in these sorts of situations.
yeah, that's true. Then again, I think some lists decided to cut it because of the Fire Nation occupation, which I can understand. But then again, the card is so powerful, and since you can adjust the amount of mana you pay for the energy counters, I just assume there's rarely a situation where you have the Fire Nation with a couple of tokens on your side, and you have to crack it in order to prevent something from happening, right? And if that's the case, well, then that's the case for this game, and it happens once in 200 games or something like this.
Yep.
That would
Yep.
be my yeah. I mean, I played both. I played the mid range variant in our latest member focus, and I also played the control variant of Hei Bai. I really like the deck, but it has some flaws that I personally didn't like that much. We just saw the interactions with the shrine, for example. It's cool if it sticks, if your opponent randomly brings up a Haywire Might and it trades the entire value that your Panda brought up, it feels super awkward, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm a little confused. What is he? Are we in his turn and he is choosing to do something against the Vidalcan shackles?
No, I
That's
think
being
he's
activated on
just.
the Hei Bai?
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, there is not. It doesn't make sense to activate Hei Bai here, right?
Well, no,
Since
he's. I think he has the cryptic command in hand, and the way he's tapped looks to me like he is using an uncounterable Mistrise Village to cryptic command something in response to the. Then again, he's made a land drop, so no. So, okay, so we're in his like combat step or main
Hmm,
phase or something like that.
no, but I'm not sure if that's correct because you're losing against the clock, right? The next
Yeah, he
attack
has the
will
cut
be 6
down.
damage again, so he's down to 5, and then he will trade for, even if Damian goes down to 4, he will still lose in combat, just based on that. Of course, there is a Snapcaster Mage,
He
but
will lose in
it's
combat. Also, he only bounced the shackles, so if the shackles get redeployed,
absolutely, yeah.
then yeah. And we also see a subtlety here, which is being played to present additional clock. It's not quite lethal yet, but it does make it awkward to crack fetch lands and stuff like that. So
To your question, Nemanja, I thought about playing Pernicious Deed, and I think it's worth a consideration. Then again, I dislike the idea of putting sweepers onto the board because Pernicious Deed is that kind of a card you don't really want to reveal it to your opponent. You don't want to reveal or give any information of any sweeper that you have in hand. And if your timing allows it, you would most likely try to cast that. And if your opponent finds a way to interact with that, you've lost your sweeper. And for most of the time, you want to keep it in hand. And by the time you have to cast it, you just pay one more than you would pay with the Wrath. So it's strictly worse than Wrath is. I dislike the fact that we're playing in a metagame where, or in a time in which Pernicious Deed is not really playable anymore because I really, really like the card. And also, because of the green feature, um, you there is at least like a certain split in order to cast Hei Bai. So it's not too hard to bring down the Pernicious Deed, but I just think it's not good enough anymore. So here we have a subtlety. Okay, putting Hei
two
Bai down
exactly one.
to 1 HP.
So he has to be looking to find um, his. He has a Supreme Verdict. He has a Dam. Um, those two cards, or he has the Solitary Confinement. Um, those are all cards that kind of would help him in this situation. However, I feel like this is a pretty big. There's a pretty big wall that he's facing
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
now.
Yeah, I think if it isn't for, I mean, the consult is used. We have the Cling to Dust, but that's not enough.
Definitely not. He
Teferi
gets to.
is not enough either. So I'm not sure. I mean, you can definitely cast Teferi here, but then you don't have enough mana to. Oh, I don't know. You don't have enough mana to cast the Dam uncounterable, and Damian has a couple of cards in hand, so you would expect him to have an answer to a board wipe that's coming in. You only get to activate the village once. So there's a Teferi coming down.
Tapping himself out of black mana, but his board wipes don't use any black mana anyway.
No, there's a wash
Hard
away
casting a wash away.
for the cleave cost.
I wonder if there is a way. He has a Snapcaster and the Cut Down. I wonder if
Oh,
there is a. I don't think there is a way for him to survive combat
yeah, I don't
with
think
the
so either.
Snapcaster.
I mean, there are two flying creatures. What do you do about the flying creatures? You don't do
Well, he has
anything.
the Cut Down to kill the Brazen Borrower,
And then there's still subtlety, right?
and there's still the subtlety. Yeah, absolutely.
Unless there is like a spell in the graveyard that I forgot about. I think not gonna do it. And then again, you're facing this problem that now you have to bounce Vidalcan Shackles. They will come back. They will again steal your creature oh, just for 5 mana, and you can't really interact with that. What you could do is, if Teferi resolves now, which does not seem to be the case. Oh, there's a confluence. Counter, counter. Draw card, I assume.
No, kind of counterbalance the Snapcaster.
Yeah, you could double cut down, but never mind. He tapped out his entire
He
black
only had
mana.
one black
You
mana.
could have.
Yeah.
No, he had a scrubland too.
Yep.
Like for example, your opponent. I get the idea. Your opponent has 1 mana left, which represents a counterspell with the extra planar lands. So you could think about, okay, there are 2 cards in hand or 3 cards. I'm not sure how many it was. I try to resolve the Sanctum without using the Mistrise to keep the counterspell up for something that they are trying to do in their turn. I get that idea. Then again, maybe it would have been the safe play to bring it down and not trade the counterspell for that, just to keep the resource for a later turn, which could have prevented your opponent from again bouncing the Sanctum or doing anything else.
Yeah.
Oh, here we have
Yeah.
a Van Shitong end of turn cast for 3. I don't like that. It doesn't draw a card.
I.
And yeah,
Okay.
I think like
Yeah.
that's a bit of a waste on the card because I think you should have at least try to draw a card with it, a single card. And I also don't feel like you're in a hurry to provide some pressure.
Looking at his hand, I don't know if I saw a land in his hand. And maybe he's thinking, okay,
Yeah,
well,
there we go.
maybe he searches his. Okay. Yeah, there we go. But I think there might have been the consideration of, okay, well, I can have this 2/2 Vigilance body in play. That presents a clock, and he has Counterspell, Stifle, Snapcaster, Swords to Plowshares. He has a lot of answers to things happening
Yeah.
with those 4 cards he has in hand, and is just hoping that the One Shitong goes all the way. Um,
So we have a Baral coming down. We see a Stifle in Jourdain's hand. Maybe that comes in handy at some point. It could, for example, stifle an imprint trigger of the extra planar lens if they see the battlefield again. You never know. I like the orange sleeves. They seem to be opaque.
yeah,
I've never seen any brand
they could be. No, no,
except
they
for
can't be.
dual mats. Except for dual mats,
Yeah,
right?
I have the dual mats, and they're cool, but these are orange on the backside as well.
On
I
the
think.
front side, you mean? Okay, depends on defining
Yeah,
what's back and forth. I know
yeah,
front. I know what
yeah.
you're
You
talking
understand
about.
what I mean.
Yeah, 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 I do.
He has a Tamio in deck, which is the only flip card he's playing. So he could just be playing a swap card for the Tamio, and
Hmm.
um, then that would be fine.
Yeah. Let's see. There is a Swords to Plowshares for Baral, which is definitely a solid answer. And here we have a commit and missing land drop. What was the spell called? Commit and memory.
Commit memory. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a 4 mana bounce a non. That's another way to deal with the shrines, by the way, because it also bounces non-impermanence.
Yeah, it's crazy. I looked through the list and I had a couple of cards that kind of stood out to me as ways to deal with the shrines.
Yeah.
but he has like 5 or 6. So,
Yeah, not too.
and yeah, that is the downside. Uh, they are very high CMC, so having them in hand, casting them, and also trying to redeploy them against decks like this where they get bounced feels very bad.
Yeah. Here we have the water bending scroll, but honestly, activating it for 3 is quite costly. If you're in desperate search of lands, you might need to do it. Okay. There's a Snapcaster Mage end of turn just to provide more threats, fasten the clock a little bit. I think it's not worth it to contest the Snapcaster Mage here. Because
For
you know
mm,
your opponent has so many spells in hand. It's very likely that you're losing this counter fight here.
yeah,
But he decides to do that. Okay. Still curious to see if that stifle comes in handy at some point.
it could counter the card draw from the waterbending scroll if he
Yeah.
does like out of desperation end up spending 2 or 3 mana on it.
Okay, so either Damian does not have an interaction here, a second counterspell, or he says, well, I got a couple of more turns. There is a Mistrise village, so finally found an island. But I'm not sure in this situation you're searching for lands anyways. Whether or not you... Okay, he decides to target the spell snare. I think you're
He
not
could
going to
no, yeah, he
stifle that.
targets it and chooses not to do it, I think.
Yeah,
Because you still have to target something,
yeah, that's
I
true. That's
think,
true.
and just
Yeah, yeah, you always target something. Oh, it's not Mistrise Village. It's the Mystic Sanctuary, right? There we go. So Solitude end of turn. That's definitely something that you should have an answer to, right? There's a Tails End that doesn't do anything here.
I'm not sure
Ooh.
if I like deploy. I mean, sure, it does decrease the clock by 1,
I think Damian
but
could have at least activated the Waterbending Scroll here. That's a Suspend.
costs
Oh,
2 to activate.
Suspend is cool, but it loses to the Logic Knot.
I don't know if you're logic nodding here.
You don't have to.
Yeah, I
You, you,
mean,
you, you do definitely don't have to do that.
it means that the they get removed with 2 time counters. So
Yeah,
when the last time counter is removed, he gets to play it back, which means that if he does deploy um, Baral in order to block something like the um, the Snapcaster Mage, then he just gets to wait for like 2 turns
yeah, yeah,
and Solitude the Baral then.
true. I like the decision here to cast Hei Bai to keep Damian off of, force him to interact.
Yeah.
And at the
Stop him
same,
from activating the waterbending scroll.
I think the life counter is not correct anymore. He should be at 7. But you know, genau.
Yeah.
Switching, the brain is switching to German. Um, just give your opponent the. Is this a Latnam's Legacy? No, it's a
No,
Merchant
this
Scroll,
is a
right?
merchant
Yeah,
scroll. Hopefully he remembers to trigger his One-Shi Tong.
I hope so too.
Okay, but the trigger only resolves after the merchant scroll, so
Yeah,
he has to. Let's hope he remembers to announce it.
I hope so too.
Searching for a blue instant. This is a high tide that he's kind of pulled to the front. There are other answers that he could have. He could get something like an engulf that shores to bounce both creatures at once, but no, he's going for a high tide, so he has the combination. This is a like a okay, yeah, he has remembered his One-Shi Tong, which
Yeah,
is like why you play the card, and it always feels forgetting a One-Shi Tong trigger is it's really
But it
backbreaking.
happens. But it happens. People are
Yeah, it does.
focusing on other things, and
Yeah.
these static abilities or the triggered abilities that happen once in a while. It happens.
So he has drawn a card here, which is looking. He drew another land drop. He has the he has the Logic Knot in hand and the Stifle, and
So
he's attacking for 5. The Solitude ticks down to 1. So if there is a blocker deployed, then yeah, I think this is looking like a Hei Bai game to me.
I think so too.
Um, but High Tide is a powerful Magic card, and there is a
Absolutely.
lot that can happen still.
And
He can
we
activate the
still have
Waterbending
the
Scroll.
Logic Knot. We have Stifle. The Psychic Frog is not really doing much here at that point.
I think I would deploy it anyway
I
because
would
there is
do so
the
too.
bouncing shenanigans that can happen.
Yeah, and also because you have 3 cards in the graveyard, which means you can assign flying to it next turn.
Yeah,
And just pitching one additional card means that the Psychic Frog itself is already lethal.
yeah,
If there is some interaction, let's say Solitude is on stack, your opponent has a Mystic Confluence to bounce the other 2 creatures and counter the Solitude, which would still not be enough in this case because you
yeah, and
can
you
just
can't
pay
counter the
3 more mana.
Solitude. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. But just to make to give an example, right?
Yeah, yeah, I get it. He's decided not to go for it,
Mm-hmm.
thinking maybe because he wants his opponent. I think he wants his opponent to cast High Tide here.
Yeah.
And the Merchant Scroll is a pretty good answer to most things that can come off High Tide. Not the Merchant Scroll, the Logic Knot. He can crack his fetch land and make the opponent pay 10 more. Probably not going to do that in order to play around any other taxing spells.
I'm not a big fan of stifling the activation here, to be honest. I think there are more relevant things to take care of. For example, Palinchron comes down and you stifle a Palinchron activation.
When we are looking at,
We're looking at High Tide.
yeah, we're looking at High Tide, but we also have Ugin Sapphire Medallion in play right now. Um,
Oh, that's
oh,
the
and he
cool
concedes.
underwater
Okay,
High Tide. That's a
yeah,
concession. So we
I
have
think that's a fine concession.
yeah. So starting game 3. I also like the fact that Damian plays the original Zendika Islands. Very nostalgic
Yes,
for me.
the Bucket Islands, very
Yeah,
cool.
very cool. That I think that was the first time. No, it was not the first time, but amongst the first times when Wizards decided to print those full art basic lands. There have been the ones from Unhinged, right, back then. But I think apart from that, there weren't that many. These
You know,
days, it's a
there was
common thing.
Unglued, Unhinged,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
and then these.
So a Snapcaster Mage end of turn seems.
This is definitely a much worse situation, I would say.
Yeah, he missed a land drop, right?
He's
Oh yeah,
missing his he missed 2 land drops. Oh no, he's
he
missed
he
1
missed
land
one
drop,
land drop. That's awkward.
and we are at the end of turn of the Hei Bai player, waiting for the Brain Surge to resolve,
Yeah,
and now he untaps and has the chance to find another land.
and it's a swords instead.
And
There is a Cling to Dust to maybe draw the land. It's very much needed, and there we have it. It's a Glacial Fortress.
it is a fortunate find. He doesn't have all
Yeah,
his colors yet, but I
we will
think it's
get there, I
also
think.
looking at the hand. It was probably a fine keep, especially sometimes you think Cling to Dust is a cantrip, but it's actually not a cantrip.
Yeah.
And if the opponent doesn't play anything up to a certain point in the game, then like we see here, there hasn't been any chance to cling anything um, up to his turn 4.
Yeah, I mean, Mono Blue can't run too many fetchlands, right? Max of 4 in order to find the Sanctuary. That's not too crazy. Oh, here we have a Mental Misstep for the Ponder. That's interesting. I'm not sure. We talked about that. in another matchup whether or not it's worth it to trade the misstep for the cantrip, especially because we saw things like High Tide and Suspend and other spells. I would rather think
Yeah,
about
having a misstep
saving it.
for High Tide, but also there's the consideration of, okay, well, I'm pretty behind this game by not having hit my land drops,
Yeah,
and Ponder is a card that, especially in the hands of a skilled player, um, gives him the ability to plan and set up quite a bit. Um, and
true.
the High Tide deck does play some cards that are, I would say, a little bit dead. Um, they're like a Pelincron can be in hand, like he also plays Walk the Eons, which is take an extra turn and buy back with sacrifice 3 islands. Don't think that happens too much, but just
Mm,
as a 6 mana take an extra turn spell.
mm.
Um,
He
and
just drew a
like
Fire Nation occupation,
he did. Okay, yeah.
which is,
So
I mean, it's not the timing to deploy that. He decides to
especially
go
with
for it anyways. Okay, okay, okay,
yeah,
okay.
especially with counterspell and evasive action in hand, if there is a counterspell, um, then again he might feel like, okay, well the coast is clear because if my opponent's hand is full of things that I he doesn't want in his hand, then he would have counterspelled the oh never mind. The Stone Scalding came down
Yeah,
against the Baral.
against Baral.
No,
But
that's
interesting. So the card resolved, and we traded a repeal for another token that could be used to cast, in the worst case, could cast a Cling to Dust, right? In the combat step. Because of the firebending one.
true. I don't think he's going to be doing that because he does have evasive action and counterspell in hand, so he probably wants to be keeping
Yeah.
that mana open.
I mean, not yet because he does not have 5 additional cards in the graveyard anyways. But, just as a general thought, it's one more creature that Damian has to deal with.
Yep,
That's for sure.
yep. And now we're looking at 4 power on the board suddenly,
Yeah.
with a bunch of answers to whatever else could come down. Um, so the plan of clocking Baral seems to be working. Then
Hmm.
again, he just drew his own Snapcaster Mage, um, which is a pretty back-breaking swing if he goes Snapcaster, repeal the token.
True.
That shuts down the entire clock that he has,
Yeah. So here we
if
have
that
the
resolves.
mana, the additional
Okay,
mana.
he does take the damage. So he is waiting for some form of tap out, yeah. So I think we are gonna see a counterspell on the Snapcaster, I
I
would
would think so
assume.
too. Yeah.
Or he could use the evasive action,
Oh, yeah. True.
um, and keep the counterspell open.
Now at least would be the window to use it, right?
There's also a subtlety, but I don't think subtlety solves the issue here. So yeah, he's pulling evasive action to the front and deciding to cast it. Oh, maybe not.
Yeah. You've showed it to your opponent. You should cast it by now.
Yeah,
And yeah. There we go.
and
That's effectively a mana leak. So deciding to bounce the Snapcaster Mage, the spell on stack. I think that seems fine to me.
yeah, it does fizzle the thing, and he still has the ability to cast the Snapcaster again and um repeal the land now.
Repeal the token, yeah.
Repeal the token now, and
But you have
with
to
the
fight.
days drawn here, I think it was the days. That also
Yeah.
means that he gets to fight through any remaining counter mana.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
what you could do is go for the subtlety first.
he's pulling the counterspell to the front here. So yeah, I think we're probably going to see a hardcast days.
Yeah. And now that this information is revealed,
Oh no, he takes the
I think you bring down the subtlety here because if you are if you win that counter battle, or let's say if you do not let this Snapcaster Mage resolve, it means that if it resolves and Damian will fight over it, it's very likely that he won't have any cards left in hand next turn to fight the Fire Nation occupation. And again, he's still left with a couple of cards, right? So the
Yeah.
Snapcaster Mage comes down. We have Hei Bai has not yet been cast, right? No,
Hei Bai has not yet been cast, but he also does not have the colors to cast Hei Bai.
that's true. No green mana.
But what we do have is Fire Nation Occupation plus Swords to Plowshares. So
Yeah.
he, I think he just has to go for it and hope that it works. And it looks like to me that it will work. What he can do is cast the Occupation, get another token, um,
No, there's a
and
sync. Yeah, we have
oh,
the
there's a
sync.
sync.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, the question is, do you still go for the? Yeah, you probably do, right? I mean, you don't have infinite time to play the game.
Yeah, and especially with all these missed land drops,
Yeah,
he really does have to clock the opponent.
definitely.
Um,
For being in such a rough spot that Hei Bai was, he's doing quite well, I would say.
yeah, yeah.
So 4
Mystic
mana,
Confluence, Mystic Sanctuary getting back a stock up is a really strong sequence.
absolutely.
Um, we could see no, there's no additional land drop, but
So there's Intuition Island, 2 more cards that I could not identify.
I think there is a Walk the Aeons in hand
Is that
with
a
the
Thought
swords
Dash? No.
with the
There's another
swords
old
now
bordered
gone.
card. Oh, it's a turnabout, right? The other card is a
Yeah,
turnabout. Yeah.
turnabout. I think the hand is Island,
Oh
turnabout,
yeah, turnabout.
Walk the Aeons. He has tapped. Yeah, so he's floating one blue mana.
Getting a complete reset. And that's a Walk the Eons. I haven't seen this card for quite some time.
Oh, he's buybacking it. I think he spent one mana too much, but it doesn't really matter because yeah, he will.
Isn't that the time? Why would you not? Interesting that he decided not to cast the Intuition in the same turn.
Oh, because he wanted to draw the stock up that was on top of his
True, true,
library.
true, true, true. Okay, yeah. So,
Wonder if the buyback was worth 3 islands. But I mean, why would you play the card if it isn't?
if it isn't for the buyback, you say?
If
Yeah.
you're not playing the buyback, then why would you play the card, right?
Yeah. I feel like, the unpredictable extra turn is always much better than the one your opponent can calculate.
There is a waterbending scroll,
Yeah,
and a waterbending scroll that does come down with he has one more land drop this turn, so and he has an island in hand, which he
you can
got back with
activate
the
it
days.
right away. Yeah.
So it does cost 0 mana to activate. He
And now
might not
with
do
the
it this
Baral
turn.
on field, we have Swords was cast last turn. Okay, deciding not to cast it makes sense because you want to keep open the commit. What do
Very
we
nice of him
have?
to play with the walk revealed. Oh no, he just showed
Snapcaster
him.
Mage is shut down against a 1/3 buddy. It's very, very it's rough. I mean, missing so many land drops. Hei Bai is still in the game, drawing good cards, but there is just no timing window to bring down that Fire Nation occupation.
Yeah, drawing a
It's
psychic frog here also
it's okay,
like it's a good
not
card,
bad,
but
but
it feels
I don't
so
know.
bad
Yeah,
without
yeah,
without being able to play the fire. I mean, I think it's still correct to try and to keep trying to play the occupation.
yeah.
because that is a card that can grind him back into this game. But looking at Baral's hand, I feel like it's very unlikely that we're gonna see him get there.
Yeah, and here we have the commit again. Um, again, I think it's cool to see the card.
Yes.
It's I think it was from Amonkhet, right? Yeah, I think it was from Amonkhet. Let me see. Yeah, the
Yep.
original one is
Yeah.
Amonkhet. Yep. And here we have the extra planar lens again, which provides some additional mana for
Interesting that we don't
6.
see a Breacher or a Narset to go along with that.
Hmm.
Um, oh, but yeah, this is a
That's very powerful. So you have double
yeah.
mana, and now you have the extra turn. There's the waterbending
uh,
scroll to draw more cards. Let's see. That's a counter spell and an intuition. I am curious to see what the intuition will find. There
So he
is
could
a
do something
pile.
like Time Spiral, Memory Deluge, um, Commander's Insight to just draw like the maximum amount of cards. Um, he could get a Vidalcan share. There's a bunch of cards to get here that could uh, lead to a stronger board state. Okay, there's an Ugin, there's an
There's
Emrakul.
Emrakul, Eugen. I mean, if you can just search for 3 very big creatures or threats, that might be it. Maybe the third one is Palinchron, but what do you do with infinite mana if you don't have an out for that? Yeah, you can go for a lot of knowledge. Hmm. Which would draw you a bunch of cards. Harbinger is also a fine one. Shutting down.
I mean, it shuts down one color right now.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of colors in the future.
I think it will definitely prevent Jourdan from casting Hei Bai, since I would not assume the deck runs too many. Ah, that's a rough decision. Do you give me card draw? Do you give me Eugen? You will definitely not give. Yeah, I think you can never grant a Eugen here. It's just too much card advantage. It will get rid of the Snapcaster, right?
Yeah.
So, and drawing
I
more and
mean,
more cards, this one will win the game on its own.
and also the uptick ability of gaining 3 life is also
Yeah,
relevant here
yeah,
because
definitely.
he has spent all his resources in order to present an effective clock, even at significant disadvantage in some situations.
Yeah,
And the +2 of Eugen just gets to undo that um, very well. Yeah, so he's still in the game with the Harbinger being put into play,
yeah.
and that seems to be, I guess, the correct choice here. I don't quite remember what he has.
So
Oh, but
we're
this, so
entering the first extra turn.
we are entering the first extra turn, so this might actually end up as just a just a draw because Baral is not presenting an efficient clock, and
True.
we are in the second extra turn. He has to set up a way to win the game this turn.
There's a Palinchron. That's not bad.
There is a Palinchron,
That's not bad. And the
and
waterbending
he
scroll is not yet tapped.
does he have anything in the graveyard to? He has the draw 7 from the commit memory. So he gets to make infinite mana, leave the Palinchron in play, and then draw 7 cards, and that
Hmm.
is, I would say, a setup to win the game.
Yeah, I think so
Um,
too.
it will take a little bit of luck,
Yeah,
but
let's see
I
about
also
that.
don't think a draw 7 on the side of Hei Bai is going to be that useful. And also, okay, this might be a mistake. Maybe, but he will, because if we remember, Hei Bai still has a Cling to Dust in the graveyard. So
Mm-hmm.
if the Palinchron happens, he can respond to the trigger, or the infinite mana, by exiling the commit to memory
Yeah.
um,
True.
from graveyard, which would make this whole ordeal a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. But that would be, I think, that would be the best line to play from Hei Bai's perspective. And
Yep.
again, both players are refueling, right? Let me check the spell again.
Yes, yes, but
Each player shuffles his or her hand. Yeah. So drawing 7 cards is also a bit dangerous to grant your opponent that many cards.
sometimes, but not when it's a mono blue player who has infinite mana. So actually, we are missing an island. So the Palinchron is not infinite.
Why not?
Well, because you need oh, never mind. Six islands is enough. Six
Yeah,
islands is
exactly.
enough. Yeah, yeah. Because you need 11.
So passing the turn,
Okay.
I
11
think
mana.
the
He
commit is a sorcery, exactly. The commit is an instant, but
wait,
memory
no.
is a sorcery.
Yeah. Yes, I'm a little confused as to why at least he didn't cling here
Mm.
at the end of the turn, because he is restricted on black mana. He can't deploy.
Oh, and now you don't have the cling open anymore. I think he kind of forgot about the cling to dust because lots of cards, laying above, and at that point he might try to not lose the game or being focused on, okay, how is my opponent actually winning the game? Is there anything? There's another island that does not do the job. I'm curious to see how that
Yeah,
goes.
same.
That's the last turn for Damian. Let's see if he can
What
assemble
I am
something.
curious about. Okay, yeah. So he has at least. So Commander's Insight acts as a Blue Sun Zenith, to draw to lethally make the opponent draw. So he does have an out in the deck in order to present lethal card draw.
Yeah.
So using, I
He's
mean,
very much aware of the fact that he has infinite mana, yes. I would not expect differently here. So, floating 10, 12? Doing it all
no,
over
floating
again?
3, and yeah. So he also has a counterspell in hand to back up any interaction
Exactly.
that could happen,
And
and
now we are going to go for the memory that should have been exiled with the Cling to Dust end of turn, I think.
but this is a, like, also maintaining awareness of everything that um that the opponent has in his graveyard is
Yeah,
very
yeah,
key.
absolutely, absolutely.
So
It's can happen.
we
It can definitely happen.
always keep in mind we are narrating from the top down. We have overview of the whole game, and we are not thinking about what each player is like. We also know most of the time know the hands of each player, so
Yeah.
we know exactly what is should be being considered for. But when you don't know the hand of your opponent, you're considering for everything, and when that happens, a lot of stuff can kind of go under
Yeah,
on
and
the way.
also, I mean, we have the entire information and we're also not focused on piloting the deck, right?
Yeah,
We're just having a look at it, and from like a very distant perspective, we can argue, oh, there's a frantic search that also goes along well with the extra planar lens, but we are on infinite mana. There's a memory deluge. Okay, so now I think we're trying to find a win condition if there is any.
yeah. There's an Ugin in hand, but the win condition I think is
Emrakul?
Commander's
No,
Insight.
no, Emrakul can't be. Commander's Insight does say target player?
Yes,
Ah, okay. Then that makes sense to search for this card. Yeah, target player draws 6 cards. So this could be a final turn that actually wins him the game.
Yeah, he could have gone for this last turn, but he would have been, in a sense, shields down because when you activate the Pelincron, oh no, he would have had. He could have. He had 2 mana open. He can untap. No, he has a lot of mana floating when because he had one land open before
Oh, and
the.
there's the intuition. That could seal the deal. No?
Well, I don't think you want to He could intuition for solve the equation, merchant scroll, and there's no spell
Is there
seeker.
a third one? That's the question.
Yeah,
Well, the spell seeker
that's
wouldn't find the commander's insight, but I would also assume that Jordan does not know about the card itself because I haven't seen it either. It's a
yeah.
commander card, and the first time I see it, to be
But I
honest.
mean, you can think about Blue Sun Zenith being the card.
Okay, fair. Yeah.
Mm.
Depending on how many times you've seen Baral after it was unbanned, right?
Yeah,
Because I have never faced it since it's unbanned, and
yeah.
Wan Shitong is not exactly a win condition here because it has no flash. This is the fourth extra turn. Oh, you mean okay? Yeah, that could be a thing. Yeah, draw your entire deck and then you find the commander's insight. That's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a solution, I guess. So you
Yeah.
probably go for Solve, Merchant Scroll, and Wan Shitong.
There's no
Oh,
Wan
he's
Chitong in
going
the
for
list.
the commander's insight right away. Is there a fourth spell that would allow him to get back the commander's insight? Oh, that's a Flash of Insight. Okay. Flash of Insight. I have to check the wording here.
I mean, Flash of Insight is a card that he
We
can.
have
He has
Commander's
infinite.
Insight and Flash of Insight. Very
Yeah,
good.
exactly. He has. He can not get the Commander's Insight, but Flash of Insight acts as a tutor when you have infinite mana.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
he can get Flash of Insight, Merchant Scroll, and solve the equation, um, which
Yeah.
will win him the game.
That's a good one. Very good find here.
Yeah.
It's a cool card. I have this one in the binder for years. I've never played it.
Yeah, I don't even own the card. I think I've seen it a couple of times, but
You
it's
don't have to. I have it. And I think
yeah.
it will take some time until we play it.
I'm
I'm
guessing it's also a card that has probably gone up in price quite a bit in foil through pre-modern printings.
probably I haven't
Yeah,
checked it.
it's in English it's $30 in foil.
Okay, how much in Japanese? Maybe I should get rid of it.
Wow.
We'll see about that
The
later.
first Japanese copy starts at €80.
Okay, that might be a bit of a fictional price, I guess.
Yeah, there's four. No, there's one,
Okay, it doesn't really matter. He
7
decides
copies,
to give
but
him
yeah.
the solve the equation
Then he gets the
because
Commander's Insight
and there
and
is the commander's insight, and that's the win in the fourth extra turn on Damien's side. Really nice game or games after all. Um, yeah, what can I say? That's how Baral is going to win games. We know that from back in the days. Always going to extra turns and always finding a sneaky way to win the game.
yeah.
Really cool showing here from both players. Piloted very fast on either side.